All right, we've shifted gears from probation violation struggles to zoning struggles. Uh, We've got two cases on Rebecca Lynn Nickerson. File number is 242246ON. That's zoning violation. That's what's actually set for today. And you also have a warrant out for your arrest for
Just found that out.
a retail fraud charge, and we'll address that here before we're done. But they set it here because they knew you were gonna be here today. So let's talk about the zoning case. Aaron Gish from the Gish law firm is present, along with Mr. Doug Coleman, the zoning administrator for White Pigeon. This is a property on Hodgson Street in White Pigeon that we've been shepherding for months, perhaps years. We had our compliance order is in effect. Our last hearing was January 15th.
May 7th.
I keep going here. I continued it to May 7th. The house was in some tax foreclosure posture. Then we had a second hearing on May 7th. Property taxes were paid. Defendant had some health problems. She was continued to work on the property, and I continued the matter until today, August 13th, try to get where we needed to be. There's a supplemental report dated today, which I have not yet seen. And let's see where we are. Ms. Nickerson, will you raise your right hand? Your right hand.
Oh, sorry.
And Mr. Coleman, you both swear or affirm any testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true to the best of your knowledge and belief.
I do.
Ms. Geschwint, what's our status here today?
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, the status is completely unchanged. When we go through the photos later, we'll see that very little, if anything, has been done to continue the property or continue the cleanup on the property. Quite frankly, the dwelling unit itself is still unfit for human habitation. It is dangerous inside of there. And I think the photographs, when we go through them, will speak for itself. So at this time, should the court find that the defendant has not properly cleaned up the property, I will be asking for a consent order enforcing the ordinance, or a compliance order enforcing the ordinance.
There's one in effect. All right, are you going to ask to move in Officer Coleman's report and photographs?
Yes, at this time I will. Mr. Coleman, did you do an inspection on the property at 300 Hodgson Avenue?
Yes, I did.
Did you take photographs?
Yes, I did.
And did you compile a report?
Yes, I did.
And if you saw that report again, would you recognize it?
Yes, I would.
We're getting it on the screen.
All right, you want, I'll.
Is this your report? Mr.
All right, well,
Coleman?
yes.
This was not, they were not supposed to do anything. If they wanted to come onto the property, they were supposed to give me a 24-hour notice.
All right,
And this
well,
was agreed upon in January.
And Mr. Coleman did not enter the property.
I think you took it from adjoining properties. So let me see if I can get this up.
Your Honor, I have printed copies if you would prefer.
Well, let's see if I can do this.
And I was also made aware that I could have stuff outside to move it to get stuff out of the house. And as I stated earlier, I have a trailer coming in the next few days to get to the dump.
Do her sorting in the garage and not store all this stuff outside.
I can do that, if
As the
that's what you want.
villages, I'm catching a little heat from the villages to the status of this property.
I'm sure, and they're unhappy with the judge that keeps giving people extensions and then the problem doesn't get rectified.
I can do, if he wants it in the garage, I can do that.
I want it gone.
Okay.
Now, what are you asking for? I find that the exhibit, the report, and the 7 attached photographs may be admitted as exhibit 1 for the date of this hearing and have been considered and shared with the defendant. So that's admitted. Ms. Gish, what do you want in your compliance order?
Thank you, Your Honor. Well, quite frankly, I think that we waited until the very last moment in this, and I think that looming deadlines certainly are something that creates motivation, but we've been here for, as this court said, 8 months.
Well, here's the order that I entered in January.
All right, let's talk about that. This hearing with Judge Middleton and Rebecca Lynn Nickerson was one of those classic zoning cases that shows how patient the court can be, but also how much patience eventually runs out. We weren't dealing with anything flashy here, but rather a long-running property issue that's been hanging over the village of White Pigeon for months, maybe even years. Judge Middleton set the tone early, reminding everyone that this wasn't just about one person's house. It was about the community having to live with the ongoing conditions. He stayed calm, but made it clear he knew the local residents were frustrated with the lack of progress and the perception that the court was just granting endless extensions. You could almost feel him balancing fairness to the defendant with his responsibility to the community. The defendant, Rebecca Nickerson, came across as trying to be cooperative, but her explanations were thin and repetitive. She talked about trailers coming in a few days to haul things away, about plans to move items into the garage rather than leave them outside. But the photos and the zoning officer's testimony painted a different story. Judge Middleton even noted that this wasn't new. This had been in front of him in January, again in May, and here we were in August with very little improvement. It's the courtroom equivalent of telling your teacher the homework is almost done every week but never actually turning it in. You didn't get the sense that she was being openly defiant, but rather stuck in a cycle of delay and excuses. On the presenting side, the village attorney, Aaron Gish, was steady and to the point. He highlighted the unchanged conditions, leaned on the photographs, and asked for a compliance order. It wasn't fiery advocacy, didn't need to be. The facts were right there on the screen, and the zoning officer, Doug Coleman, backed it up with clear testimony. Coleman did a solid job too, explaining that his report and pictures showed little had changed. And he even clarified that he hadn't entered the house improperly but took his documentation from adjoining property. It was clean, professional testimony without any grandstanding. The atmosphere was a mix of weary frustration and a little exasperated humor. Judge Middleton even joked lightly when the defendant raised her hand late to take the oath, a small moment that kept things human. But under the light tone, you could hear his resolve hardening. The village was unhappy. The problem wasn't getting fixed, and the court wasn't going to keep hitting the snooze button. By the end, you got the sense this was the last call for cooperation before real enforcement measures kicked in. What stood out was Judge Middleton's balance. He wasn't harsh, but he wasn't buying vague promises either. He gave the defendant space to speak, acknowledged her health struggles, but reminded her hand the record that deadlines matter. For a judge, that's a tough needle to thread. Compassion on one side, responsibility to the community on the other. All in all, it was a textbook small-town courtroom moment. You had a defendant trying to catch up, a zoning officer with the receipts, a calm attorney doing his job, and a judge trying to walk the line between patience and accountability. If you found this hearing insightful, consider subscribing, hitting the bell, and letting me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every one,